If there was a Madden rating for my guest today and Joe Lynch and his proficiency over esports and broadcasting, it would be a 99. It would be. And Lynch right now is group head of content and programming at Electronic Arts. He joins me on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. And this is a platform where we uncover inspiring stories from leaders in sports media and really dig deep into what drives them and what pushes them to be successful. And Joe, first of all, I want to welcome you on here. And I did some digging of my own and looking at your story. And speaking of ratings, I want you to assign, as I start out here with you, a Madden rating to your skill as an actor at Long Beach State when you were in the theater department club. How good were you back then?
Wow. That's going to be a tough one. Just the OVR. There's a lot of people that are going to comment on this one. I mean, I'd give it like an 82 OVR. Now, much like most people who think they should have a higher OVR than they do, legit was probably like 70-ish something. But I'm gonna go with I was like an 82. But it was fun. It was a big part of my life for a long time. Not a lot of people know that, so thank you for breaking that news. But it was a lot of fun. It was a big part of who I was at that time.
Another big part of who you were back then was you were part of the rugby club.
Yeah.
What kind of competitor were you like out there when you were engaged in some rugby?
I miss it, man. Like I grew up in my family, sports were a big deal, right? Everybody played 3 sports going through school. It was just something that we always did. My parents were athletes. It was just something that we did. And so when I went to college, I stopped playing. I played football all through high school. And then when I moved out to California, my roommate, or the guy that lived next door to me, born and raised in Rhodesia in Central Africa. And he one day was walking out to rugby practice. And I was like, well, where are you going? He's going, rugby. He goes, well, we used to play American football. You should come. I was like, okay. And so I went and I was hooked. And for anyone that has never played rugby before, maybe have just seen it, it is a really, really confusing game until you play. Right? You got to get into the eye of the storm and then you go, oh, okay, I get how this whole thing works. And I fell in love with it. I absolutely loved it. I had a blast. And I played for 2 years. My senior year, getting into my senior year, we had a rugby tour of Scotland and we went and played. And so we got to play against some of the, best teams Scotland had to offer. Wow. And we had a blast. And we played a couple of university teams and beat them pretty handedly. And we as 20-year-olds tend to do, our egos started to get the better of us and we started to have ourselves a good time. And then towards the back end of the trip, we started playing like the men's clubs, right? We started playing some like semi-pro teams and they whooped us bad to the point where I broke a couple of ribs on the trip. And so I'm in Europe, my first time leaving the country, I got broken ribs and I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep going because I'm in Europe and that's what I'm going to do. And so I get back to the States, I heal up from that. My first game back was at Arizona State and broke my collarbone. And I was like, so I think the universe is trying to tell me something. And that was my last game. I loved rugby. I was about to play a little bit right before the pandemic. My kid's playing basketball now. And there was a father I was just talking to, and he said he was on a rugby club here. And so I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I want to start playing again. And then pandemic, everything shut down. So I have not gone back out on the pitch. I would like to. I like to think I'm still 20, but we'll see how that goes.
You might not still be 20, but the competitive juices you had when you were 20 have just channeled themselves into a new era and in a new way in your life as you take on this professional role with Electronic Arts and everything you do from a broadcast perspective as well. And you work with a lot of, you could call them athletes. These are professional gamers who dedicate their lives to this sport. We see it on television. We see it on ESPN and Twitch, and the list goes on for what you do. In seeing how dedicated they are to their craft, the commitment, the sacrifice, what is it like out of these competitive players that the world outside of them doesn't see?
Yeah, I mean, I have this conversation a lot with friends of mine who are professional athletes, former professional athletes. My brother-in-law is an agent. We've had these conversations. Are they athletes? Let's park that for a second. They are professional competitors, no debating that issue. And what does that mean? That means that they eat, breathe, and sleep this. They practice 10, 12 hours a day. And it's funny because a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's people playing games in their basement. It's not what these guys do, not what these people do. They, yes, are playing a ton of games. They are keeping their mind right. They're keeping their body right. They're exercising. They're eating right. They are training themselves to be able to do these marathon events and marathon tournaments. Because they're not, you know, you look at a rugby game, look at a baseball game, soccer game, you're talking about a 3-hour game, couple hours, and you're in and out. These guys are playing 8, 10, 12 hours in a stretch. So you got to be ready for it. Your body's got to be ready for it. Your mind's got to be ready for it. So these guys train and work hard. And anyone that says they are not dedicated professionals is just not paying attention.
For so many that aren't professionals but love to play games, video games can be sort of that escape. We all go to that. Your work is your escape because you work in that field as well. So what is it like knowing that your work is your escape and the dynamic of that?
It's hard. It's not hard. You know, I know it's cliche to say, but my dad used to say all the time, you know, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I am you are in people in our position are in a position to do something we love every day.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing anything else. I don't know what else I would rather do. So yes, my work is an escape, but it's also my escape. And what do? One, I have 4 kids, so that is a big escape for me, and I do that. But I play Apex as an example. I'll play Apex 3-4 days a week. I play with my friends, and this is what we do. I watch TV all the time. I'd always said, you know, early in my career, hey man, I found someone to pay me to watch TV. This is like, what could be better? Well, now I have someone that pays me to watch TV and play video games. So, you know, 10-year-old me is pretty psyched right now. So to me, I get to do what I love. I get to use it as an escape. And I enjoy it. I love what I do. I'm also an awful person to watch TV with. My wife hates it because I'll be like, oh, that is a bad edit. Why did they use that music? The lighting's awful. Like I do that all the time. And she's like, can you just shut up and watch the show? So I'm awful to do that with. Now, yeah, so I have a good time with that. I do watch a ton of TV. I do play a lot of video games. But I like to get outside a lot. I mean, it's living up here in the Bay Area now, just be outside, get some sun, and enjoy the kids, enjoy the family. That's the escape.
Joe Lynch is with me. Yes. Joe Lynch is with me on the On to Something podcast. You can follow Joe on Twitter at Joseph R. Lynch. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. And of course, as we mentioned, this is the On to Something podcast. So Joe, you brought up your wife, and I find it interesting in that you can never turn off that switch when you're watching stuff with her. And that actually indicates to me that you love what you do, because if it's a part of your life, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, clearly you are passionate about what you're doing. How has your wife been there to facilitate your passions, to believe in you throughout your life, and been there in moments where you really relied on her strength?
Wow. We've been together now 24 years. Dating and then married, but you know, we've been together a while. In those 24 years, I've produced thousands or tens of thousands of hours of television, and she's seen exactly 0 minutes of it. Just doesn't watch it. Right? She doesn't watch it. That being said, you know, she's my best friend. We got 4 kids. We've had a life together. We've lived all over the world. We lived in New York. We lived in LA. We moved overseas. And for in this business, we spent a lot of time on the road. 2019 is an example. I flew 200,000 miles to events and things all around the world. I spend 12, 14, 20 hours a day in a truck in a parking lot in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like we all go through this. And without that support system at home, knowing that there's someone there that's got your back all the time. Sorry. See, this is where you're asking these questions. This is what you get. But you know, you got someone that's got your back, that's there to support you, that knows what you need to hear when you need to hear it.
Yeah.
And what you don't need to hear when you need to hear it, when you don't need to hear it. she is the everything. She is the reason this is all possible.
4 kids.
Yeah.
With her.
Yes.
Those 4 kids, how do you gain strength from them in what you do?
So for the parents in the crowd, I have 2 8-year-olds, twin boys, 8-year-olds, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. They are the most interesting dudes I have ever met in my entire life. They are a blast. They are, even the twins who are genetically the same, are completely different individuals. The things they notice, the things they say, the things they learn and think about, the questions they ask. They'll ask me the most random questions, which will then spark something, which is like, oh, you know what? I could do a thing, which is where I could, and I'll build off of what they're talking about. And the fact that it's just this kind of unconditional sort of love and excitement and entertainment. Just like, oh, daddy, let's do a Nerf gun fight. Daddy, let's go do this. Let's go do a puzzle. Let's play a game. Hey, can you play Plants vs. Zombies with me? Like, they just want to have a good time and they want to have fun. And at the end of the day, with everything that I do, I think a lot of times when you're making TV or you're making entertainment, the fun you have while you're doing it translates on screen, right? Yeah. So like when the crew's having a good time and talent's having a good time and everyone's having fun, that you can see that, right? Yeah. You can see that at home and you have a good time and you enjoy it. If it's a cranky set, nobody likes each other and everybody's cold, you can read that too. So I very much make an effort to make sure everybody's having a good time while we do it. And these guys really help me do that. They really help me realize, like, you know what, whatever I think is a big deal is really not that big a deal because we're going to go have fun. And so they're pretty great. It's, you know, it's hard, right? 4 kids is hard, but they're really, really fun and they're good. They're really good kids. And so yeah, they're a huge part of what I do and why I do it.
When you're enjoying those moments with your kids and being a dad, how often during those moments do you think about your own father?
A lot. It's interesting. I grew up in Rhode Island, right? I am the youngest of 10 kids. I have 8 sisters and a brother. Really, really big Irish Catholic family back in the Northeast. And when you grow up in a place like that, you don't move into Hollywood and being a producer and making shows and working the Super Bowl and doing all these different things are not real things that you think are possible, right? And so for me, growing up, it was about work hard, take care of your friends, be a good person, take care of your family. Those are the things that matters. But work hard and do right by people. So when I at 19 decided that I was going to pick up and move to LA, everyone was like, what are you talking about? We don't leave. Like, we stay here. That's not what we do. And I left. And for years there was, my dad specifically was talking about, he's going to come back. This is a phase. I'm like, Dad was at NBC at the time. And I'm like, Dad, I'm on the set of The West Wing or I'm at Friends right now. And I'm not coming back. He's like, he's going to come back. He's going to go to law school. You know, my family, unbelievable group of overachievers. Like, my sisters, my brother, we got lawyers, we got finance, we got educators. One of my sisters is a Rhode Island State Supreme Court justice. Just unbelievable overachievers. And I'm the black sheep TV guy. You know what I mean? And so there was always this sense of like, they didn't really take it seriously. You know what I mean? And I was just kind of over here doing a thing. But I had great friends and had a great family. And those are the things that matter. And over the years, fathers and sons, it's tough, right? Especially, the kind of throw the thick-headed Irishman in the middle of it, and it gets even tougher. My dad, who was a lawyer, he got sick a couple of years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago now, and he had Alzheimer's. And to watch someone go through that, for anyone that is listening or watching that has seen it, is not a good time. It's not. But at the end of the day, the things that mattered were your family and your friends. And at the end of the day, being a good person. That's the stuff that he cared about. That's the stuff that I care about. And that's what I'm trying to teach my kids. Yeah. Sorry. We're on like an Oprah show right now.
How proud would your dad be of everything you're doing right now?
Huh. You asked me that question over the course of the last 20 years. I would have given you very different answers. I now know, very proud. It's funny. After he passed away, my sisters were cleaning out his desk. And they found a letter that he had written to me and never sent, saying exactly that. And I wish I had known 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but I know now. And the good thing was, at the end of it, those last few years, once we knew he was sick and once everything started to change, all the years before didn't matter. We were friends and it was great. We had a good time and we enjoyed each other and we had a blast. And that's what I remember. And that's the stuff that I talk about to my boys and to my daughter, because that's what matters. You know, he taught me the right things. He looked out for me and he was proud of me. Yeah.
And I see him in you, and you're taking his legacy and then pouring his love that you have within you onto your own kids. And so in a way, you've immortalized him, which I think is a beautiful thing. And Joe, go.
I was just going to say, no, I just want to be clear. In his defense, he immortalized himself. My dad was a larger than life character. I am just a small part of what his legacy is. He has an amazing family that he won, his family by blood, but also the family that he created through his friends. That's all on him. My sisters, my brother, my mom, all of it, all because of him. I'm lucky to be a part of it. I'm just hoping to continue that down through his name.
Asking you one more question about your dad. The contents of that letter that you read, what were the words that he was saying in there?
That he was proud.
Yeah.
That he was proud. That he was excited to see the person that I became.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Joe, we all are excited to see the person you've become. And we're talking to you in your garage, which is so fascinating, because I want to know how you've turned your garage into like an air traffic control center here, where you're doing all of your work. You're running all these shows from your garage.
Yeah, it was, not by choice. I can tell you that much. Look, when the pandemic hit, when you're doing live TV, you need a control room. You needed a control room. You needed a switcher. You needed a graphics machine. You needed cameras. You needed talent. You needed all of these things to be physical. You needed to punch buttons. You needed it. We had to figure out very quickly how to not need it. We had 9 days. Basically what happened was, when the stay-at-home order hit last year, or 2 years ago, whatever century we're in now, I don't even know anymore. We had a show 9 days later. And the question on the table was, do we spike it? And do we have to kill it? To which then I went to my team, which is a phenomenal group of people who way overachieved. How can we do this? Can we do this? Can we figure out a way to produce live TV from talent all over the world, players all over the world? How can we do that and then bring it to everybody at home? Is it possible, or is this a fool's errand? Bryan, one of my EIC, said, yeah, give me 24 hours. Let me see what I can figure out. And then he came back to 24 hours. He's like, I think I can figure it out. There's a couple of vendors. Let me start making some calls. Let me work the problem and see what we can figure out. The good thing was, and this was what I really love about the esports portion of the program, is that I have counterparts at the other publishers, right? At Riot, Blizzard, and some other big production companies. And we all started calling each other, trying to like, hey, what are you guys doing? How are you solving this problem? What are you figuring out? And it was this kind of like community sort of, it takes a village kind of vibe that happened, which is, how can we get us back up on the air, right? Because we're not going to be able to fill traditional sports, right? We're not going to be able to fill a stadium. We're not going to be able to bring in players and do this whole thing. Like, we can't do that right now. But because of the nature of video games, we can figure out a way to get it done from home. And that's what we had to do. So first couple of weeks were rough, right? It was a lot of duct taping things together and figuring it out. Meanwhile, I'm in my bedroom trying to figure this whole thing out. And then we did it, and we got it on the air. And like I said, it was bumpy for a bit, and then we worked the problem, and it got better, and it got better, and it got better. And we've gotten really, really good at it now. But I was in my bedroom that whole time. And so I then said, look, I'm in the corner. I don't live in a big place. I mean, I got a bunch of kids. And so I'm in the corner of my room, kind of going like this on 2 monitors, and like, I can't see stuff. And I came and looked at my garage, and it was kind of my kids' playroom and storage, and just kind of like everybody's garage. And I just went, throw it out, just start throwing stuff out. Like, let's just get rid of it. And so I then took all this stuff and cleaned up. This was a bunch of, garagey type stuff, and all of my memorabilia and things from work, which my wife doesn't allow in the house, I decided to put up. And now I have a little bit of a backdrop. But most importantly, I got a bunch of monitors. And so now I can have program up, I can have a multi-view up, I can have all the things I need, our comms panels. I have my iPad where I can run. I have all of the pieces that I need. I do miss having a director in the room, or having my producer right here, or having an AD that I can talk at, or a graphics person I can point to. I miss that. I miss the camaraderie of being in a truck, and the intangibles of creating a show that way. But we can do it. Yeah. And we kept it going, and it forced us to innovate. It forced us to come up with some ways in which to produce things that we hadn't thought of before. As an example, staffing, right? We needed to fly people in. We needed a graphics person. Our best person's in LA, and our director's in Chicago, and we're going to bring these people in. Now we don't need to do that. They can do it from their house in LA. They can do it from their house in Chicago. So now we can use talent, because, scheduling's a problem. So now it's like, hey, you know what? I got to bring you out from New York. You need a day on the front end, day on the back end. Yeah, but there's this show that I was going to do, and my schedule is not tight. Now you don't have to go anywhere. Now you can do it from home. So now the director that we wanted, as long as that day is open and the rehearsal day is open, I don't need travel days. And now they can work on other stuff too. So I think at the end of the day, the necessity of it translated into really interesting opportunities for ways in which to produce more better,
The way in which you handled that crisis and were able to get things on air starting in 2020 will go down as one of the great achievements, I think, in sports television and on the virtual side as well. And there will be many more books, and there will be many more speeches about what you guys were able to do to problem solve in a time of need. And what you've put on now, it's a flawless product. And I want to leave you with this final question, Joe. So what does working and watching and intaking everything esports related, as a fan, as you being a fan, what do you get out of that experience that you don't get out of as a fan of watching a traditional sporting event?
Oof. I don't know if it's necessarily that two things. One is, I don't necessarily think that everything is what you don't get out of it. I think it's just a little different, right? But then there is one thing, which is, the one different thing is the interaction. Right? What you get in esports and what you get in gaming that you don't get in traditional sports and entertainment, for that matter, is the immediacy of the feedback, right? So when you're on YouTube, you're on Twitch, and you have the chat going, and you have social media happening, you know exactly what the audience thinks, exactly when they think it, and there is no gap. When I started my career back at NBC 100 years ago, you're waiting for the Fast Nationals to come out. You're waiting for Consumer Insights. You're waiting for pilot reviews. You're waiting for all these different things to be like, okay, this is what these 20 people in a mall in Arizona thought. I'm being facetious, but you get my point. And you get that watered down feedback. Right now, you got the fire hose wide open, and you know exactly what everybody's thinking at all times. And you gotta sift through that, right? You gotta figure out who's giving you real honest feedback of what they really want, and who's just a troll. You got to figure all that out. And it's good. It's really good, because you can make calls in the moment. I'm sort of switching back to the production side of it, but like as a fan, you can give that feedback and you can say, I don't like this, or this is not okay, or this isn't good. Hey, can you fix this? I'm not following. As a battle royale as an example, right? Battle royale is really hard, right? So Apex, one of our games, it's a 20 team battle royale. It's 60 players on a map, and it's hard to follow. And so watching the chat and seeing, hey, I didn't understand that. I didn't get that. I didn't see what this was. You as a fan have a chance to help us get better and give you what you want to see in real time, which is really, really cool. So that's the thing that's different, right? That's the thing that's completely different. What's a different experience, but the same thing is the players that, we at EA have this sort of conversation about sort of couch to champion, which is if you're at home and you're learning how to play and you become a superstar, you can play on a pro team and you might wind up on a main stage somewhere. Hard to say that watching a professional sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not going to just decide, hey, I'm going to start playing hockey. I'm gonna get some skates and I'm going to start playing. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to make it to the NHL if you're, 16 years old and say, hey, I'm going to start now. No, you're not. Like, it's just not going to happen. But in gaming, you can do that. You can really pick it up and get it. And yes, there is natural skill and ability and things where gifts that people have, like, sure. But you can grind and you can get there. And that's the thing that mainstream sports have. So as a fan, you can look at it going, I could be there. Like, I could do it. If I put my mind to it and I worked hard, I could get there. I have been a traditional sports fan my entire life. I was never going to say, yeah, I can play linebacker for the Patriots. I can do that. Yeah. Yep. I work it. I am. Yep. Go to the gym. It's not going to happen. I'm a foot too short. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. So I think that's the differences in the two between traditional and esports, which are fantastic and a lot of fun. And I think that's why people are connecting with it so well.
Yeah. And like you were talking about, the engagement that more people can have, they can feel so much more involved.
Yeah.
Like they're a part of it. That's huge when you're building up an audience, as you know, and that is where you guys are tapping into so successfully and will continue to as the future goes on. I am so excited, Joe, to see the next steps of what you guys are going to be doing. I'm going to be following this along the way. And as I wrap up here on the Onto Something podcast, I wanted to thank you for your courage in talking about your story so transparently. I know a lot of people will be motivated by it, as we all are, in what you're doing and your rise in the business. Joe Lynch, I'm Bryan Fenley. Joe, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks. Appreciate it.